The time to join our webinar, which is around top tips for managing last mile delivery in peak season.
Yeah, and I would say that we do have pretty exciting and interesting 30 minutes ahead of us. So let's get going.
So firstly, just to tell you about the companies that are taking part. So it's a joint initiative between myself from Honeywell, where we provide hardware that enables technology and solutions in last mile delivery. So we are really focused on providing efficient and productivity-based solutions that improve your overall business performance and cost savings. And then I'm going to hand over to Mikael, who represents the other companies joining the call.
Yeah, and actually both Pocket Mobile and Trimble Maps are part of the Trimble family. And the Trimble company has a long history within satellite navigation. And when it comes to Pocket Mobile, our core is really to provide SaaS services for last mile and pickup and delivery executions. And our purpose is really to help the people that are doing the job with digital tools to make the life easier. And that could be drivers, terminal workers, team leaders, planners, and so on. So a big focus from us is usability. And another important thing when creating the efficient last mile is, of course, to handle the optimized routes based on the map, the stop details, the traffic. And that's really the core of our sister company, Trimble Maps, who can provide really granular information for this purpose. For example, if you want to have a optimized map for transport and logistics that is really can tell you what bridges you're going to drive on based on the vehicle height and the lorry. Well, that's Trimble Maps.
And then this, just for your visual delight, these are your speakers for today. So myself, I am Industry Marketing Manager at Honeywell, and I look specifically after the transport and logistics market. So my role really is to know and understand everything transport and logistics. So whether it's last mile delivery, 3PL or road freight, my world is 3PL. My world is T&L essentially. And Mikael?
Yeah, that's a lot, Justin. So my focus and my objective is really to create the efficient last mile and create happy customers. And practically, that means that I'm driving and executing marketing, business development at Pocket Mobile. And I would really like to emphasize this part about happiness, because I think this is what we need in our industry, in the T&L and transport and logistic industry, more happiness. I mean, we see that all around the world, that postal and logistic companies, they do have difficulties to recruit new drivers. So more happiness for me, please.
Well, we want a happy world.
Yeah.
So just a couple of housekeeping points before we get into the content. So firstly, this session is being recorded. So if you have to drop off, or you want to, if you're so amazed and delighted with the content, you want to listen again or send it to a colleague, the recording will be available afterwards. And we're also going to take Q&A as well. So you should see a Q&A box on your screen. Please type your questions, comments in there, and then we will answer all of those at the end. But in the world famous phrase, on with the show. So what can you expect from this? This is really about Mikael and I pulling on our industry knowledge that we have through talking to customers, talking to the market, and understanding some of your challenges within particularly peak season, but also throughout the year that retailers and 3PLs really have to deal with. And from that, what we want to do is just give you a top 5 tips, just some ideas that you can take back to the office, take back to the boardroom, for ways in which you can improve the performance at what is always going to be a heavy and stressful time. So peak, I love this picture. It's, a massive tsunami wave. And it kind of represents what peak first started to be, in that we always had these traditional peak seasons where we would have a flat, steady flow of parcels. And then all of a sudden, coming up from sort of October to January time, it would just be this absolute enormous wave of parcels that would suddenly come through our networks and ready to deal with for last customers. And we would all really have to ramp up and look at ways to deal with it. But what's actually now happening is that the tsunami is there, but it just seems to be staying there instead of crashing down. Just the numbers are ramping up and the volumes are staying the same, and we're just getting more peaks and troughs as opposed to this giant wave. And interestingly, I was having a conversation with a returns provider this morning, and they were saying exactly the same, and that, you know, it really isn't so much just this enormous peak and trough now, that it is, you know, it's a lot flatter than it used to be. So, you know, there's a lot more pressure throughout the year than just at this one particular time. But that being said, you know, everything that we do and every action that we take to manage our parcels throughout the year, it's a real lesson learned that we can take throughout the rest of the year as well. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Mikael.
Yeah, so if we drill down a little bit what this tsunami may really means in practice, now as Justin said, I mean, it's about a huge spike in volumes, and you know, seasonal variations in business is of course nothing new. Other industry segments are pretty used to handle that. For example, we talk about tourist industry, travel industry. People go skiing in the winter time and swimming and something in the summer. They are used to that. And also shipping industry, as well as telecom industry, where I have some background in. When we talk about shipping industry, they are pretty used to have maybe 25% of the passengers in just 1 month. If we talk about telecom industry, we talk about peak hours. So about 80% of the telephone calls are happening in just 1 hour. Now, here we talk about huge spikes. I think that's the difference from normal seasonal behavior. And in some cases, we might see that the volumes are just doubling in just a few days. And of course, this means a lot of things. The first one is that we do need to scale up. We rapidly need to scale up resources. PostNord in Sweden last year had about 3,000 temporary workers during just a few days. Royal Mail in UK showed figures that they used 23,000 seasonal workers during the peak period last year. And Deutsche Post in Germany had about 25,000 additional delivery staff workers.
I can top all of that, Mikael. UPS are currently recruiting 100,000 in the US for seasonal workers.
So, you know, to scale up very quickly, that is a challenge. So now, the other thing, if you think about the customer on the other side, can we really, while we're doing it, maintain the same quality? And I would like to cite, quote Scott Laird, the VP of Operations for DHL. He said the number one challenge is obviously ensuring customer satisfaction during such a busy period. And it's natural because we're bringing in new people. We're trying to really doing very fast. Also, to really scale up very quickly does have a cost. It's more costly to have temporary resources than to have your ordinary business processes. And of course, revenue is increasing, but at the same time, it's hitting us on the last line on the P&L statement, on the profitability. And, you know, peak period is not just stressful inside the company. It's also a pretty stressful period because holiday season coming up in our personal lives. There's a lot of things happening around us. So there's a lot of stress, and we also need to watch out for the employee health and retention, so it doesn't give us any more problems.
So let's try and give you some top tips to help deal with all of that. So first one, number one top tip, make the delivery first time, every time. It's honestly not rocket science. I'm sure each and every one of you already has this at the top of your list in terms of doing it. But the challenge is in doing it in peak seasons when we're hitting these really big peaks is obviously we've got to upscale everything, and there's a lot more of a challenge to it because we're dealing with much higher volumes and quantities. So we really need to pick up on lessons learned and best practices that we've had throughout the year. So like I said, first time, every time, it is obvious, but there are ways that we can do it. We have to we have to make sure that we can deliver first time, every time for a start, because the main effects if we don't are that we're doubling cost. If you have to go back and deliver it twice, it's twice the cost. So it's the last mile, excuse me, is the most expensive part of that delivery process. So we want to get it right first time, every time to maintain profitability. And the second that Mikael has alluded to is customer experience. Doing this at peak is much more of a challenge, but equally customers probably have higher expectations around this particular time of year because, maybe they're expecting Christmas gifts or sale gifts, or so there's a lot more pressure because there's a lot more expectation for those products to be delivered when we've told them that they'll be delivered. And then Mikhail's just going to talk you through some more practical examples of how you can actually look to deliver first time every time.
So what can we do? Well, let's turn to Einstein. Einstein has given us a lot of smart things. We know that. And what he said here is that, if we're going to really solve complex problems, we can't just think in the same way that we thought yesterday. We need to think in a new way. We need to think outside the box or outside the parcel. So one example of this, I wanted to share with you a true story. And in beginning of 1900 in India, there were too many cobras, too many poisonous cobra snakes, and too many people got killed by these cobras. So the Indian government, they thought we better do something about it, and they came to this idea that let's give a reward for everybody that can bring in a dead cobra. So they did. They launched this program, and quite fast a number of dead cobras was brought in very quickly, and they gave out the number of rupees for everyone that was handed in. But what also happened in the background that they didn't know was that the number of people thought this was a lucrative business opportunity. So they created cobra farms. They brought cobras up. And when the Indian government found out about this, what did they do? Well, they stopped the program. And consequently, what happened then, of course, that the cobra farms, the guy that were running the cobra, they just opened the door and let out the cobras in the wild again. So in the end, there were more cobras out there. And we don't want any more cobras. We want to be able to manage peak. But I just wanted to give you this idea about how we need to think differently. We can't just think in a linear way, because then we may not get where we want. Yes, and that brings us really to the next slide, because here is one example of how different routes can bring us to the same goal. And I call it the multiplication effect. Now, if we really want to double, what can we do? Well, we have a number of parameters to play with. We can increase resources, we can work smarter, we can have better IT tools, we can increase working time or increase first-time delivery rate, as Justin explained before. If we only play with one parameter, like increase resources, we double that with 200%. Yeah, we will reach 200%, but it's going to be pretty difficult. Another alternative is to really increase all the parameters at the same time with 15%. And if you multiply that, you will actually end up at 201%. So you double. So this is two ways of getting to the same result. But of course, you can all understand that it's a more smoother way if you do all the things at the same time and just add on a little bit. I think we can move on, Justin, please.
Sorry, my system's hung, so the slide's not moving. We're probably going to rush about 20 slides ahead.
Well, Justin is working on the IT side. I can continue to talk. So you probably have seen similar ways of this multiplication effect in other cases as well. And you have the same phenomena there, that you can really do small steps. So we're going to do poll. Yahoo!
Excellent. So my apologies for the technical delay. But we're going to, as Michael says, we're going to do a poll. And this is really just to get a bit more feel for what your what you think are your priority challenges coming into peak. So you should have a button on your screen where you can take part and vote in the polls. And let me just launch the poll. There we go. So what we want, two very simple questions. What do you think are your greatest, what's your greatest challenge at peak? So is it upscaling the physical resources? So do you have to really make huge efforts in terms of purchasing resource for your physical assets, like bikes or carriers or vehicles or mobile devices for the peak season? Do you have sufficient temporary staff? Do you really find it a challenge to go out and get staff in place? Is it around managing the customer expectations? And do you really struggle to make sure that you're hitting your SLAs? Do you get enough information from your retailers? Are they helping you with visibility so you can help to manage those customer expectations? And then in terms of your 29 prediction for peak, what do you think? Do you think it's going to surpass previous years? Is it going to be, do you think it's going to grow year on year? Or do you think we've seen a real peak that everything is going to start moving to much more of a flatter approach? Or are you feeling very proud of yourself because you think, do you know what, it's going to be big again, but it's okay, we're fully prepared. So we're getting some results in there. So I'll just give it another 10-15 seconds. If you haven't voted already, please do. So yeah, as we would expect, that top is managing customer expectations.
Sorry, Justin, you need to share the results.
Hold on, there we go. There we go. I was going to keep all the results to myself because I was so amazed by them. So managing customer expectations, as you'd expect, is pretty much the leader on there, alongside resourcing the staff and the physical resources. Customer expectation is no surprise, given that it's a priority and it's a growing priority for all of the 3PLs, carriers and retailers out there. And then it just looks like you all think that peak is going to keep growing, that it hasn't peaked, and we're going to keep on growing, and as consumers we're going to keep on purchasing. So again, it's making sure that we're prepared, that we're ready, and then we've got all the processes in place and we're learning from previous years.
Yeah, pretty clear results. Thank you.
So that leads us on to tip number 2. A lot of you are already going to have technology in place, whether it's software, hardware, back-end telecoms, platforms, servers. We've all got several layers of technology within our businesses. And specifically for this, if we're looking at managing peak, one of the best things that we can say to you is really leverage what you've got. That the technology is there, and it has so many capabilities to be used and to be optimized that can really help you deliver on peak. And also making sure you've got the right technology. So speaking from a hardware perspective, the hardware itself is really just the enabler. It's nothing without software, but equally that hardware's got to be the right choice for your business and the environment that it's in. So if you're looking at a peak environment and you're looking at drivers going out every day, you want them to have a rugged, durable device. You want them to have a device where they can actually go out and use it in the wind and the rain and the snow, or they can look at the screen in bright sunlight, or they can repeatedly drop it on concrete car parks. They're pretty brutal in this environment, and you need a device that's going to live up to being able to work. But equally, it needs to be able to run that software very quickly and efficiently as well. So if you're looking to upscale the number of drivers and workers you've got, then if you're going to look to increase devices, you actually need to be able to deploy the software that's on those devices quickly and easily. And that being said as well, you're also going to need devices that those new temporary workers can actually get to grips with really quickly and easily. It needs to be intuitive, and it needs to be familiar to them, as perhaps a consumer device would be, so that it gets them up and running, and you've got minimal training time, and then you've then got your minimal downtime with them, so that you can keep up to speed and keep your processes nice and efficient, and keep those those last mile deliveries going every time.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. I really look forward to get skiing in the winter time. So yeah, I know it is very important that you have the right gears. The same way, if you're out, doing delivery, at least here in Sweden, it needs to work in snow as well. So now, when you do have a very good device and that is handling, you also need a software that can help you. And going back to what we talked about before, but rapidly scaling up resources, bringing in temporary workers, you do need to have something that is working from day one, that is so intuitive that you don't need to train people on it. And we do that by using what we call guided workflows. So the next step is automatically popping up as a result of the reference data or the situation that you're doing. And this has really been appreciated by a number of our users. And of course, there's a lot of other tools that you can leverage. I know that talking about map and navigation support, I know that London Black cab drivers, they have about over 25,000 streets memorized in their brain. They take pride on being expert in navigating excellent without GPS, but everybody is not a London Black cab driver. I mean, if you're a temporary worker just brought in on Black Friday, proper navigation support and timely instruction can really be help. And I also would like to emphasize when we talk about the geofencing and satellite navigation. So yes, we are quickly moving on because time is flying. Another way is really to be able to leverage multiple in-flight options. And that's really going back to Justin's point about securing the first time delivery. Now, if you can't deliver because the recipient is not at home, or if the parcel service point is really filled with parcels everywhere, you might be able to deliver somewhere else. And to have multiple options is a good way to really be able to secure the first one delivery. Now, what you do need is, of course, you need the proper technology in place to do the track and trace and a ability to communicate with the and interact with the end users. Please go on, Justin. Oh, another poll. Yahoo!
we like our polls.
Yes.
Right, so this one is around, we've covered handsets and we've covered the technology. So who's providing those driver handsets for you? Because looking at how you source them, then it's obviously going to have an impact on how you roll that out to the drivers and workers you've got out in the field at Pink. So is it something your organization is doing directly? Are you working on with a contractor, doing it through a third party? Are you employing a bring your own device strategy for peak season? Or are you looking at a mix? Have you got a bit of both out there? And we'll just give you another few more seconds just to give us your views. And that's actually, and I'm going to close the poll now because that's actually a really interesting mix. And that I'd expect to see probably more through the directly through your own organization. So I'm really interested as well to see that there's zero for BYOD, and actually there's a mix of supplied and driver BYOD. So that really highlights the fact that the BYOD piece is gonna pay dividends when you come into the peak season. But equally as well, you need to make sure that you've got the software and the technology in the back end or in the sorting depots, etc., that's going to make sure that those drivers are as efficient as they can be. And then, of course, you just need to be able to manage, if you're looking at drivers with BYOD devices, is that what happens when their device goes down? Do they go back to paper? Do you need to supply them with a device? Do you need to make sure you've got sufficient stocks? And equally making sure that you've got the software that is easily deployable across both rugged hardware or consumer hardware, etc. Super. So moving on.
Interesting. Yeah, let's move on.
Well, we can try, because not that either of us work for technology companies, and technology is failing us miserably today. So thank you for your patience. There we go. Next. Okay. So tip number 3. All in the analytics. We have access to huge amounts of data, and if you're anything like me, then you will take quiet times of the year to go and look through data analytics reports, research, etc. Those are my quiet times when I go through and I look and I see in depth what's happening in the market, what our customers are doing, what the market is doing, trends and challenges, the ever-changing stats that we see there. And it's good to do it in the quiet times because it provides you with some best practices to and ideas as to what you can then roll out into some of those busier times. But we have access to a huge amount of data. So we have business intelligence, big data, IoT. We have it coming in from all manner of sources. But the really important thing is what do we do with it? What are we actually going to use that data for? I know of businesses that have huge amounts of it and they do absolutely nothing. And then on the other hand, we have businesses that are really doing some clever, intuitive, insightful stuff essentially with this. So to give you some examples, if you're looking at it from your handheld devices, we can provide you some analytics around that. We can tell you how your devices are performing. We can tell you how often your driver is using that device. We can tell you how the battery is performing. Is it quickly draining? What's the device doing when it's out there? So we're providing with tools with how those, for instance, the devices are actually working out in the environment, which is a really great tool because not only does it tell you what's going on, it means that if you can see that you're having particular issues and challenges, say you have one driver that is just drops in a day and he's using his device more than others, maybe you need to provide him with an extra battery, or maybe you need to change his route a little bit to enable him to work more effectively. So we can provide you with some really great insight as how you can manage your devices and reduce downtime and get the maximum uptime out there. And then again, it's all back to the software that we have on it. So we have people going down to, for instance, postcode level when they're having failed deliveries so that they can really identify why those deliveries have failed. What is the issue? And I have one particular example that it was within the UK, and it was a driver and he was driving. There was always one consistent failed delivery with a particular address that the recipient always had to go and collect it. And this came up flagged because they had the appropriate benchmarks in the manifest system. And then what ultimately happened was it was apparent then that this address was consistently being missed because actually it was hidden away at the end of a really quiet drive and the driver just didn't know it was there. But again, it was highlighted on the anomaly. And again, it's all about customer experience. So we ended up with a happy customer, a happy driver, because he's got another drop, so that's more money for him. And they've really used that analytics to solve, essentially it's a very small one delivery problem, but what happens when you upscale that? And again, particularly when you've got these high volumes and the peaks as well, you want to be able to predict and know what's happening with all of your drivers, with all of your parcels, where everything's happening. Particularly with the extra emphasis on that customer experience as well.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So yeah, we all know that analytic is and many people are saying that data is our new gold. And of course, if we can increase probability to understand more about the future by looking in the back mirror, that definitely has a huge value. So specifically things to bring up, dwell times, that could make a big difference if the dwell time is 2 minutes or if it's 15 minutes because you need to run up in stairs and so on. External data like traffic and weather forecast makes a huge difference. We talked about snow before, which is also something that at least is impacting us in Europe at this period. We also talk about looking at the customer preferences and the recipient's preference. Do they normally reroute? Do they normally want their deliveries to their working address and so on? You can leverage that, as well as resources and cut-off times. As this is a topic of its own, so we just want to highlight how important it is.
And then tip number 4, always remember the customer experience. It's been a common thread when Mikael and I have been talking through this so far, that customer experience is top of the list. It's getting more and more priority as we go through understanding what our customers' needs and challenges are. And I am probably the worst person to try and impress, because if I have a failed delivery of any type or variety, I am straight on that phone. I'm the first one to complain, and I'm always really frustrated when I know the technology is there and it can be managed and dealt with, and it isn't. So it's I'm probably the worst customer ever when it comes to last mile delivery, but we just cannot stress enough that it's hard enough to deliver a really good quality, consistent customer experience, because this is the point where your brand as a retailer or as a delivery company, where you actually interface face to face with that customer. That's a one-on-one engagement, and a lot of businesses would actually kill for that. So you have to make sure it's a really good quality experience, because it will impact on what you do. And equally, when you're going at peak system, it just makes it all that much harder, because as customers, actually we're probably expecting a little bit more, because we're buying Christmas gifts and we need to know that they're going to arrive, because there's a deadline date. They've got to be there ready for Christmas. Otherwise, I'm going to have really disappointed grandparents because they've not got their packet of shortbread biscuits. So there's a lot more pressure on us to make sure that we know what's happening around the customer experience at peak.
Yeah, I know, Justin. My grandparents also love biscuits, so definitely.
Can't have a bucket of biscuits.
Now, the good news is really that there are really good tools for this. So, we can really make it the customer interaction piece pretty easy. So, in the same way, we want to make it very easy for the people that are working and doing the delivery. We can also make it very easy on the other side for the recipients. So they can have the real-time tracking, the traceability. They can have easy to find contact if they want to contact and call the driver. It's really easy if they want to give instructions. Maybe I want to say instruction that they shouldn't use the doorbell because my kids are asleep and they should knock on the door gently, or that I want to reroute my parcel from a home delivery to a service point. So all easy. Technology can help you.
So another poll.
Whoa.
We're loving a poll. Right. I think I probably know what the answer is going to be to this. I certainly know what my answer is.
It's a bit leading question, I would say. But
yeah. But does your customer expectation change at peak? So answers on a laptop, please. We just have a few more. Oh, do you know that you can't see this, but interestingly, it's you're going to be so excited with these results. They're not what I was expecting. Give you a few more minutes. There's a few that haven't voted yet, so please do. Right, so let me just share. So actually, overwhelmingly, the answer is no. Well, but not overwhelming, but very close, is that actually your customers don't have a change expectation at Pink. They expect the same high quality service day in, day out. So that's good news for us, because it means that there's a certain level of consistency in terms of SLAs and what we do and deliver. But equally, that means that we need to make sure that we're fully prepared, that we can deliver on those peak times as well to the same levels.
I mean, who would like to have angry grandparents because the biscuits doesn't arrive? So
yeah, I know. Right? Then again, if they don't arrive to me and they're late, then I'll just eat them. So I'll just lie to the grandparents, say they never arrived.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Let's move away from the shortbread, if we can. There we are. So our last tip of the day. The returns process. So we've really covered up to this point getting those parcels and the deliveries out, but the returns part is a huge part of that as well, and making it easy for people to return things that are broken, that aren't what they expected, or they've ordered several sizes. We've got to make that returns process, particularly at peak, a lot easier. For people that are managing the infrastructure and the networks, we need to look at ways that they can actually start to get those parcels back in and manage them getting back into the routes. We need to make it really easy for the customers, whether it's picking it up from home or whether they're taking it to a drop-off point. Looking at paperless returns, for instance, as well. Not so many of us have printers at home these days. We're printing. I mean, crikey, I was a big fan of printing out an A4 returns label and putting masking tape or tape with Mickey Mouse or something on it to paste my label on there. But that being aside from the making it easy for the customer part, equally is there's a level there as well for the retailers. If some of that stock is going to be returned, they'd really quite like to know where it is and when it's coming back, because particularly at peak, they can resell it. And equally, where can they resell it? Can they then divert it back to a store where it's needed? Would they take it to a sales warehouse? Where can they divert it to so they've got a really good chance of reselling in this particular peak period, so it doesn't then end up as sales stock?
Yeah, and as you say, Jose, I mean, returns is normally a pretty big headache for a lot of logistic and postal companies, and that is of course because it's coming the other way. You don't really have the same control that you do have for your deliveries, because you don't know when and where they're going to turn up, and at the same time sometimes they don't have the right labeling, and you may be able to have the option to create a labeling on the spot. And that's the option to create a manifest on the spot. Also, they need to be sorted. Some are going to resell, as you said, Justin, and others are going to recycle or scrapping. If you can sort them early in the process, you can gain a lot. Also here, there could be special instructions. Maybe the driver need to pack the goods in and wrap them in a certain way. And we all know that, if we're going to have special instructions and special treatment, those are the deviations that cost. So we want to make it really smooth, this return process. I don't think we should go more deeper into this, because this is a total subject of its own. But just to highlight that there are good ways to manage this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that then brings us to the conclusion. So just to summarize, that we've covered 5 top tips, and I'm sure a lot of our retailers and our carriers are already doing this in their business, and it's already top of their list. It's just that these are all magnified and a lot more challenged around peak. So the first one is getting the delivery right first time, every time. Cut costs, keep the customer happy. Number 2 was leveraging the technology. So really utilizing the hardware that you currently have in place to really support your drivers in the delivery process, and making sure that your software is being utilized on the right devices for the right job. Next up was looking at the analytics as well. There's so much data out there. Let's really use it for some actionable insight. Let's see where some of the deliveries are going wrong. Let's see where some of those failed deliveries are, and then let's make those right first time, every time. Let's look at some of the routes that are possibly a bit too far out there, a bit sparse. We could maybe cluster some more deliveries together to make the drivers really efficient. Next up was looking at customer experience. It's top of everybody's list. It will only get higher and higher as we move much more towards omni-channel. Customer experience is always going to be top of the list, whether it's within peak or within what is or used to be a normal season. The trick really is just to make sure that we've all got the right resources in place to effectively manage that customer expectation, and that we don't let them down just because we're busy with all these added volumes and quantities. And then number 5 on that list is returns. Let's not forget that process, because that's actually part of the customer experience as well. We want to make them happy. And let's also not forget that sometimes if we're carriers, then our customers aren't just the end user, they're the retailers. So let's not forget the returns process, and looking at how we can incorporate that as part of our peak season management process as well. And just on the topic of returns, Mikhail and I are planning another webinar a bit later in the year where we're going to cover that a little bit more specifically, and we will of course send out invitations. We hope to see you on that one too. Just as a couple of final notes, we're going to open up to Q&A in a minute, but just to let you know, we will be sending out a link so you can listen to the recording again if you so choose, or send it to a friend. We are also visiting Parcel and Post Expo in a few weeks' time, so if anybody is attending that, again, please do search us out, or drop any of your contacts at Honeywell or Pocket Mobile a note, or just reply to the email that's going to go out with the link on it. So with that, Mikhail, do you have anything else, or do you think we're ready to open up? I
think you summarized it very well, Justin. I just would like to add that we also spoke about cobras and biscuits to grandparents.
Yeah, or biscuit cobras, that would be new.
Yes.
So, Mikhail, do we have any questions?
There's no questions at the moment. Maybe you're a little bit shy, but please fire off if there's anything that you think we can answer.
Yeah, otherwise, of course, at any time, anyone from Honeywell, Trimble, or Pocket Mobile is
Of course.
happy to talk to you about any of these points in more detail. Obviously, we've only had just over half hour to whiz you through our top 5. Okay, any questions, or do you think we're in a point to close?
I think we're on point to close, and really hope that we're being able to give you some valuable insight, and we really look forward to see you on the next webinar.
Super. So everybody, thank you ever so much for your time. We appreciate you joining us for this, and wishing you a happy peak season. So Amy, have we closed the broadcast? Have we stopped recording?
So I'm still here, Justin. So,
Yeah, I know you're still there.
yeah.
Hi, Justine.
Hello. Have we stopped broadcasting
Hi,
now?
sorry about that.
That's okay. We stopped recording and broadcasting.
Okay, I'm gonna stop